The late afternoon sun scorched the open Texas plain, turning the horizon into waves of molten gold. Lena Moore slammed her truck door in frustration, the engine coughing one last time before surrendering to silence. She was miles from town, surrounded by dust and silence. Her hands were rough from ranch work, her heart even rougher from too many disappointments. When she finally kicked the tire and muttered a curse, a voice came from behind her, low, calm, and steady. "Looks like that truck's had enough of the road." "Ma'am?" She turned, squinting against the glare, and saw him, a cowboy on horseback, silhouette framed by the blazing sky. He dismounted slowly, his movements unhurried, deliberate. His jeans were faded, boots worn, hat tilted just enough to hide most of his face. There was something about the man, Cole. He said his name was. That made Lena's pulse skip. He smelled faintly of sage and rain, an odd comfort in the middle of all that dust. "You from around here?" she asked warily. "Just passing through," he replied, crouching beside the engine with quiet confidence. Within minutes, he had it running again. "You've got good hands," she said. He smiled faintly. "Just learned to fix what needs fixing." That evening, when she finally reached the diner in town, she saw him again, sitting alone at a corner table, stirring black coffee like he had nowhere to be. Their eyes met for a brief second before he nodded politely. Something in that small gesture made her heart ache. The next day, she spotted him at the feed store, offering to help old Mr. Harris load grain into a truck. Always working, always helping, never asking for a thing. The townsfolk called him the drifter, but Lena saw something steadier behind those quiet gray eyes, something old, broken and searching. A few days later, she found him on her land, hammering a broken fence post back into place. She marched toward him, hands on her hips. "You just go around fixing everyone's fences?" she teased. He looked up, sweat glinting on his forehead, and said, "Just can't stand seeing good things fall apart." There was no arrogance in his tone, just simple truth. She laughed softly, handing him a glass of sweet tea. As they worked side by side, the evening sun stretched long shadows across the field, and for the first time in years, Lena didn't feel alone. That night, they sat on her porch, listening to the crickets sing. He told her little, only that he hadn't stayed in one place for a long time. She told him more than she meant to, about her father's ranch, her debts, her dreams that seemed to die one by one. He listened without judgment, eyes full of quiet empathy. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "You've got a good heart, Lena. Don't let the hard times convince you otherwise." She smiled faintly, unaware that this dusty drifter had once owned half the land she worked, and that their lives were about to change forever. Morning light crept across the open field, washing Lena's ranch in soft gold. She stood on the porch with her coffee, still thinking about Cole. Over the past week, the quiet cowboy had become a part of her daily rhythm, helping with chores, fixing fences, sharing sunsets that seemed endless. Something about him felt safe, as though he carried calm wherever he went. But beneath that calm, Lena sensed a weight he never spoke of. She didn't know that miles away. The newspapers often whispered the name Cole Carter, one of Texas's most powerful landowners, a man who'd built an empire yet lived like a ghost. That morning, the crunch of tires on gravel broke the peace. Lena frowned as a line of sleek black trucks rolled into her driveway, dust rising in their wake. Men in suits stepped out, their polished shoes looking absurd against the red dirt. They nodded respectfully toward Cole, who had just emerged from the barn. "Mr. Carter, sir," one of them said. "We've brought the documents you requested." The title, Mr. Carter, echoed in the air like thunder. Lena's mug slipped from her hand, shattering on the porch. Her heart hammered as she looked at him, really looked at him. He stood silent, his Stetson hat shadowing his eyes, but his jaw was tight with guilt. "Cole, what's going on?" she managed to whisper. The men waited, still and formal. Finally, Cole took a slow breath, removed his hat, and looked at her. "I didn't lie to you," he said, voice low. "I just didn't tell you who I was." He handed her a thick envelope. Inside were legal documents, her debts cleared, the deed to her ranch restored fully in her name. Lena's hands trembled as she read. You paid off everything?" She stammered. "Why?" "Because you reminded me what it feels like to care again," he said softly, stepping closer. "I've spent years surrounded by people who wanted pieces of what I owned. But you—" He paused, emotion roughening his voice. "You looked at me like a man, not a name. I hadn't felt that in a long time. Tears welled in her eyes, and she shook her head. You could have told me the truth, she whispered. He smiled sadly. I was afraid you'd treat me differently, that you'd see the money before the man. The vulnerability in his words broke the last of her anger. The wind swept across the fields, carrying the scent of wild sage and dust. Cole stepped forward, gently placing his hat on her head. You showed me something money can't buy, peace, he murmured. And if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you right here. Not as Cole Carter, the landowner, but as the man who loves you. Lena stared at him, tears spilling freely now, then threw her arms around him. The men quietly turned away, giving them space. In that sunlit silence, two souls that had wandered too long finally found home in each other.